In the last year, the number of rape prosecutions has reached a record low, while reports of cases have increased. However, all victims are not allowed to have access to mental health therapy before a trial concludes, although the Crown Prosecution Service is reviewing this policy. Tonight, we look at what impact that has on those affected, like Bonny Turner. And a warning, her story does contain some distressing details.
My name is Bonny Turner, and I've been a victim of rape 3 times. The Crown Prosecution Service restricts the kind of therapy rape victims can have. As a rape victim, if you want to have a chance at justice, you cannot talk about the actual rape with your therapist. And the reason for that is if by some miracle your case does reach court, then the defence could later argue that you've been coached by your therapist. I do honestly believe that I may have been less vulnerable to the 2nd and 3rd rapes if I'd had proper support. I had been asleep for a few hours already, but suddenly I became aware of his body on top of mine. I initially thought it was a nightmare that I was having because I couldn't move my body and my voice wouldn't work. So I tried to stop him, but I couldn't because my body wouldn't move. I just kept on saying to myself in my head, Bonny, move, And eventually my arms kind of swung into action and I shoved his shoulders with both of my hands away from me and I shouted out, "Stop." I woke up sobbing, breathing rapidly, heart rate going through the roof. He messaged and said, "I know I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have even tried." So even though he didn't use the word rape and I didn't use the word rape, for me it's very clear that it is a confession of rape. I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD. There are times I'm walking around where I suddenly have a stabbing sensation in my vagina. So it's with me all the time. I found out 2 years later the Crown Prosecution Service decided not to prosecute him. They say that it's his word against mine. There is strong evidence to suggest that my case was dropped among hundreds of other cases because the Crown Prosecution Service set a target of rape cases to result in a conviction. So the End Violence Against Women Coalition have launched a judicial review against the Crown Prosecution Service, in which case I'm hoping that my case can be reopened. But in the meantime, it's been 4 years since the rape happened and I've still not been able to talk about the actual rape with a therapist and to get the help that I need.
And we thank Bonny for talking to us. Our reporter Leana Hosea joins me because let's pick up on that review about access to mental health support. What is the latest on that?
Well, the policy is now being reviewed by the Crown Prosecution Service to address that problem, where victims like Bonny can't get the therapy they need for fear of damaging their case in court. The Crown Prosecution Service also says it's working hard to close that gap between the high reports of rape and the low number of cases that actually get to court. And they've recently launched a 5-year strategy to address this problem. But women's rights groups say it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't answer why prosecution and convictions have declined so drastically in recent years. They say the CPS changed its policy and they've got a judicial review to investigate this. I spoke to one of the solicitors earlier who's working with Bonny and other women.
We think what's happening is that the Crown Prosecution Service are now only charging what they think of as surefire cases that are certain to result in a conviction. But in a very difficult area of crime like rape and serious sexual offences, that's not going to be the case with the majority of rape allegations. And it's certainly not going to be obvious from the outset that a rape allegation, between 2 parties who are known to each other is going to result in a conviction.
What do they hope to achieve from it?
Well, essentially, they want the system to start failing victims of rape. They wanted to go back to how it was a few years ago, where they said prosecutors would look at a rape case, try and build it, and then let a jury decide and not just drop it if they don't think they can win. But we'll know more about this next year when the review gets to court.
OK, and I know you'll be following it. Thanks very much, Leana.